Um, I'm going to present the first results of my PhD research that always starts with a literature review. So I start, my PhD topic is about the integration between heritage conservation and urban planning policies. My approach will be focused in Portugal. But here I will talk more about how literature has been addressed this dynamic between these both policies. And these are the very preliminary results of a systematic literature review. So this is my topic, is to see how these two fields are addressing both thematics. But mostly my research is from the perspective of spatial planning. So both fields, they have their own tools and policies, and sometimes in theory they are integrated or they cross. So you have conservation planning in the yellow, and you have the general planning in the blue, and the green ones is where in theory they cross. But actually the literature has been saying that management plans, conservation plans, and even easements are still very focused on conservation, and mostly they don't address change, so they don't address development. So still they are at yellow or in the side of conservation planning. And this is so true that could explain why management and institutional issues keep being seen as are still the major affecting factors for World Heritage properties. And this happened since the beginning of the convention, and this still in 2019 when the Historic and Urban Landscape Recommendation released the first survey, and the properties, they still answer that management systems are the most affecting factors for their properties. And this we can see when we have facadism or when gentrification grows, because actually conservation still cannot get this balance between development and preservation. So my research question for literature review was how published literature has been addressing the integration between these two policies. And literature review can be approached in two perspectives. From the perspective of the research approach, so the perspective of the author, and also the results or the policies that they are addressing. So my results for this paper are just about the research approach, and I want to see which data sources they use, which actors they address in their approach, and which is the heritage perspective. And so data source, when I talk about data source, I want to see which planning policies and tools, interviews and observation, and if they use also media sources. Actors between private and public, and national, and also the scale. And heritage about categories, if they are only address listed heritage or not listed. Attributes and values. So attribute is what is heritage and why, and the values are why is heritage. And to identify attributes and values, I use taxonomy that has been developed for a few years ago, that systematize each kind. I don't have the slides here, sorry, but systematize which categories are the attributes, like from intangible to tangible, if it's a building, a part of a building, or is a square or a garden. So this is all attributes, and then the values if it's economic, political, historical, ecological. You will see the results. So I start with the scoping search, and first I start with crossing these two keywords, heritage and planning, and I got this huge number. But then I add other key words, and I got 800. Yeah, it's good, I can manage. And with 800, and this is the methodology that you should follow when you do a systematic literature review. That is a methodology that has been used in the medicine field, and we are starting using it in our field. That is more difficult because we are more qualitative than quantitative, but still we are trying, and I think we are getting interesting results. So you start with searching the Scopus, that is one of the biggest databases for scientific papers. And I just include articles, book chapters, and conference papers. I choose the language, and I screen in three fields, that is social science, economics, and environment. And then I choose all the articles only after 2000. Then I screen just for keywords. I will not read everything. And then abstracts, so keywords were screened with keywords. The abstracts were manually screened, and then the full text were also screened with the same criteria for inclusion and exclusion that I used in the abstract. So in the end, I got 88 full eligible texts, but those 88, only 39, they really have a clear methodology description. And when I say this, they explain which sources they use, which data analysis method they use, and another criteria that I don't remember now. But well, in the end, they have one chapter or one paragraph where they explain their methodology. So it was like 40% of the last. So those were the ones that I analyzed. So first I analyzed the perspective. If they approach this dynamic from the perspective of conservation or the general planning. And most conservation is winning, is more concerned about how development can be improved with heritage. And you see that this issue is increasing. And maybe the historical urban landscape recommendation has an influence on it, because you see a trend. Conservation is almost always winning, but not always. And so the data sources, most of them they analyze so regulations, legal frameworks, plans, decisions, and official reports from the government. But they are not only focusing the policy analysis, they also use interviews with actors. So half of the articles, they use these both sources. The actors that the literature most address is local communities. And this is interesting because actually, local communities are the actors mostly addressed, but it's always after the implementation of the plan, not during the policy making. That's why. And also, all the literature is about after the plan being implemented, not how was the process to get there. You see between conservation and general planning, you see that general planning mostly are concerned about how all private actors like local communities, residents and users, developers, how they see these dynamics between both fields. And also it's interesting to see that general planning also is motivated to not only for listed heritage like conservation, that is mostly for listed, but is more open to see the other heritage that is not listed, is not still recognized, but still general planning recognize some value on it. So heritage attributes, they all talk about tangible heritage. Any of the articles were just focusing intangible, and 10% they focus on both. And this is related with the result of the local communities, because when you address, even after the implementation, when you address local communities, you are asking what they are values. So intangible values are always there. And when you go deeper in these attributes, so you have the green one is the tangible and the pink is the intangible. You see that general planning it's not a big different, but still general planning has one more category in intangible attributes, and also has a bigger variety for tangible attributes than conservation. That conservation is much more focused in building and ensembles, context that is related with the protection zones, for example, and areas that is gardens, something that natural and cultural heritage are mixed. And the values, I'm finishing. So the values is why you see that something is heritage, and also here you see that general planning is a broader perspective to heritage, and but also a very traditional one, because historical and age values are with aesthetic are the traditional values that we address to heritage. And conservation is not addressing, at least in these papers. So, primary conclusions. There is a lack of systematic analysis using coding methodologies for urban planning policies and tools. Conservation planning is overrated in relation to general planning. General planning is more integrative, listed, because it considers listed and non-listed heritage, public and private actors, and more variety of tangible and intangible heritage categories. And conservation is more focused on economic values and social, limitations, of course, of this approach, or my approach, is I need to expand this approach to the other, all 88 articles, even if they don't have the methodology described. Will be interesting also to cross actors with heritage categories, values, and attributes. and also to cross these categories, values and attributes of heritage with planning, different planning stage, so during policy making and implementation will be the next step. Thank you.